So let's start by looking at the basic shapes we can create, so it's easier to make the sketch yourself. So what I do is I make a square or a rectangle from the left corner to the right corner, and you see that because the person is looking that way, the iris is not in the middle. So let's make a line in the middle. Now you see that that is where the iris starts, well, the side of the iris. You can also draw a line in the middle like this. You see that the pupil is on this line. So drawing guidelines will help you to be accurate. So the first line here, and you can measure with your pencil or with a ruler if you want to be even more accurate. So that's how you can start with your eye drawing. And now a line in the middle, a line here. Remember to draw your sketch lines light, because these are just guidelines. You want to erase them later on. You're just going to look at the reference photo and draw everything you see. So it's a bit lower than the middle line. So here, remember that you don't see the whole iris because of the eyelids covering it. And remember that if you look at an eye from the front, the iris is a circle. But remember that if you look at a circle from a different perspective, you will draw more of an oval. It will become an ellipse. So you see that the iris isn't fully round here, but more like an oval. So the lashes go all the way to here. So with the sketch you want to take your time and get all of the proportions accurate before you start the shading, because you don't want to start the shading and then notice that maybe the iris is too far to the right or to the left. Okay, let's go from this corner up for the eyebrow. So I'm measuring from the middle of the pupil and the crease line, because we already erased the guidelines. So like this, and then half again. So I'm just comparing areas from the eye, and then to see. So now you can draw these hairs, and once you start the shading you can correct some parts, so it is possible. Just make sure you are satisfied with your sketch before you move on. So I'm going to start with the 2B, and I'm just going to start putting down some graphite here in the iris. I usually use the 2B, 4B, 6B, 8B and the black pencil, and I use the HB for the sketch. So I'm just going to hold my pencil more to the back and start shading this whole area, and control your hand to use the same amount of pressure for the whole layer. If you're still having trouble with that, you can practice it on another piece of paper again, because practice is what will help you improve. I'm going to use the soft tissue, and I'm going to go over the whole area, including the eyeball. Let's move on to the 4B, and I'm also going to fill in the pupil now with very light pressure, because you want to be able to go darker later on. I'm going over the edges of the iris because those are darker. So as always, I build up the layers gradually, leaving this part lighter for the highlights. And I'm also going to darken, very light pressure, and again I'm going over the eyeball. If it gets too dark, then I just use the kneaded eraser to pull up some of the graphite, so I don't worry about that too much. So now let's take the 6B. You see this darker part here, you don't really see a line, but you see that it blends in with the shadow here. So also try to recreate that. Make sure you don't have any lines. Just use the blending stump to softly blend it. So I'm going to use the kneaded eraser, lighten this part up a bit. So on this stage, if your shading layers are light, you can erase some parts if you need to. Using the 6B, let's see first, this part goes a bit higher. Look more like this. Now let's blend this. Okay, so it's a bit higher now. Now let's move on to the 8B. And let's darken everything. See how dark it gets. Still with light pressure. Don't press hard where you think you need it darker. For that, we're going to use the black pencil. I'm not going over the whole crease line because it might get too dark. That's not what I want. I think I'm going to draw the eyelashes now, and pay attention to the direction. Some are shorter, some are longer, because when you're looking at them from above or from the front, they look shorter. Draw what you see, not what you think you see. Here they go down. Now with the blending stump, I'm going over the crease line and here over the lash line. And with the soft tissue, just smudge a bit. Now let's see, let's use the black pencil already. Going over the iris on this part, so where it's darker. The crease line on this side is dark. Light pressure, go over it. Don't want to darken it right away. And let's go over the lashes. Use the blending stump and blend the lash line. Now with the 6B, and here adding some graphite here. Make the eye look a bit more round. This is the 4B, and here it's also a bit darker. Now using the soft tissue and blending this all. I need it to be a bit lighter here, and gently pull up some of the graphite. You see, you can just bring back that highlight. I see some highlights between the lashes. Darken this part of the corner. Erase some highlights in the iris. You can shape your kneaded eraser to any shape you like and pick up some of the graphite. You see that if you have some extra graphite on your stump, you can just darken some areas. So here I need it a bit darker. Here on this side is shadow, so it should be darker. So the shadow coming from the upper eyelid and the lashes. This part should be a bit darker, I think, but I'm going to move on to the eyebrow, and then we can go back and see if we need to darken any value somewhere. I think here it also should be a bit darker. I'm going to start with the 4B and going to go over the darkest hairs first. These ones are light and go up. These ones here are really long. Using the blending stump and blend over this part, because in between the eyebrow you see the skin. Now with the 6B, these ones are wet and sticking together. So look at what you see. Try to understand what you see by observing the reference photo, and then you recreate what you see. Now the 8B, going over these darker hairs. Now I'm going to use the black for the darkest parts. So I'm looking at the darkest values I see here. Now with the kneaded eraser, lighten that up a bit, and here. So this makes it a bit softer and you don't see those eraser lines anymore. Now let's use the black pencil again and go over these hairs to darken even more. Soft tissue. Now I'm going to use the 4B. This part should be a bit darker. So there's a shadow under the eyebrow, and that makes the eye look rounder if you have the correct values. And with the first layers, this might look dark enough, but then you add the darkest values, and then you see that the skin can be even darker, so you just add that later on if you need to. This all makes the eye look rounder. And then here, the soft tissue. When you're going to smudge over a lighter part, don't smudge with this part with the graphite, but take a clean part, because otherwise you will make it too dark, and here you want to keep that highlight, so pay attention to that. I see a highlight on top of the eyebrow. I'm going to use the kneaded eraser again, and I want to make it a bit lighter. So I just put it down on my paper and then pick it up like this. I'm making a shape, a thinner shape, and then I erase in between those hair strokes. Okay, now taking a clean part of the tissue, gently go over it to soften it. So we're going to look at all of the final details. At this point you can also take a picture and look back, see if you notice anything you forgot or anything you need to correct. I'm going to take the 4B again and add another layer. And here again with the 8B I'm going to darken that again. Because of all of the smudging, you might need to darken again with very light pressure, and then you want to blend that. And here, going to use the kneaded eraser, lighten this a bit before I start the smudging. Soften it all, blend it all in. I'm going to add some more graphite here. With the soft tissue, soften this. Now with the black pencil, I need to darken here a bit again. And here, just going over them again. Soft tissue.